Good evening. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. I'll ask everyone who may have a cell phone or a smart device in their possession to please put it on vibrate or silent. Refreshments are to the back of the room, so feel free to partake this evening throughout this evening's proceedings. Honorable Premier Alden McLaughlin, Deputy Premier Moses Colonel, Mr. Russell Benford, Vice President, Government Relations, Americas for Royal Caribbean Cruises, representing Verdant Isle Port Partners at our head table. Honorable Joseph Hugh, Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. Councillor Mr. David White, Councillor for Tourism, Transport, Sports. Councillor Ms. Barbara Connolly, Councillor Barbara Connolly, Councillor for Education. Mr. Kenneth Bryan, Chief Officer Mr. Strand Bodden, Minister of Tourism, and our technical team all here at the front this evening. Welcome. This evening is the fourth of 9 meetings that will be taking place throughout our islands, leading up straight up to December 6th. Our next meeting will be November 23rd at Savannah Primary School. As you entered this evening, you were given a magazine and a flyer along with a pen and a piece of paper. There will be no roaming mics. We would encourage you to look at the various presentations that will be presented and then write your questions, because more often than one, some questions that are being posed are already answered in the videos that we presented. But we encourage you to interact and participate with any questions or concerns that you may have by indicating once you have your questions written on the piece of paper, and persons who are walking the floor will be more than happy to take it from you. I would like to welcome to the podium at this time welcome Honorable Joseph Hugh for the official welcome.
Thank you and good evening. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to the Georgetown North and Georgetown Central meeting on the proposed cruise berthing facility and the enhanced cargo port. This evening we hope to provide you with some details and further information that will help you to make an informed decision on the proposed project. We're not here to force anything on you, as I've heard people say, or shove it down your throat, but very much so in a fashion of presenting to you as much information as we possibly can and in a format in which you can participate. I also wanted to just give some background and context on myself and the project. I was elected in 2013, and prior to that election, one of my tasks as a candidate was to go in the field and do some canvassing on what are some of the top issues facing our country at the time. And there were the regular ones: education, security, but there was also cruise tourism, the port. There was our relationship with the United Kingdom, and small business development, support for small businesses. Those sort of rounded up the top issues that we encompassed into our manifesto. And so I got elected in 2013, and I was fortunate enough to become a councillor in the Ministry of District Administration and Tourism under the Deputy Premier Moses Colonel. And so I was involved in the development or the embryonic stages of the port project. We very quickly after taking office were summoned down to across the street to Royal Water Terminal on several occasions. There were very disgruntled tour taxi operators, store owners. There were fights. There were people being kicked off the dock and a myriad of issues. And it became very clear to the Deputy Premier and I that we had to do something quickly to restore the numbers or stop the decline in numbers of cruise tourism, and in fact start the process towards building a cruise berthing facility. And so we called Ms. Michelle Page, set up a meeting in Miami with representatives from the major cruise lines, and we went to the meeting. And it was probably my first major meeting as a representative, but we were not entirely given a very warm welcome. In fact, it was, you guys are wasting our time. We've been here at the table several times before. We have a list of 10 little items that we want done at the Royal Water Terminal, and you guys can't even do that. So both Deputy Premier and I looked at each other and we said, well, give us that list. And so they said, fine, and we were given the list. And to give credit to the previous government, credit to the Port Authority, everything on that list was in storage. It was available: benches, tents, a floor plan, separation of different types of tours, etc. And so we were able to roll that out very quickly. And the Deputy Premier attended a conference in Colombia, a cruise tourism conference, and when he was there, he was congratulated on how quickly we got these things done. We've been asking for this for years, and you guys did it so quickly. And then when we got to the point that we engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers in the outline business case, then the conversation got serious. And I continued on as a counselor throughout the years at the forefront, answering questions on the port. When we first got when we saw our first schematic design, the Port Authority pushed back right away and said, we will not entertain any cruise berthing facility development without some enhancement to the cargo port. And that's when the cargo port became a part of this project. And they were right. As we know today, the cargo port is at capacity, and it's very difficult sharing it with the cruise side of the business. And so we went back to the drawing board. What do you need? We need another roll-on, roll-off. We need a longer pier. We need our own dedicated area. And so we went back to the drawing board. That delayed the project quite a bit. Then when we came back, and of course we had said at that time that we want the most economic design for the country. And when they came back with the next design, we went out to speak with some of the stakeholders and with the consulting with different groups. And we felt that that design had too much of a major impact on the environment. And so we sent them back to the table again, and we ended up with a design that significantly reduced the environmental impact, the dredging, by taking the piers much deeper and adding the dolphins on. Now this is a more expensive undertaking, but we changed the scope from the most economical to that of the least amount of impact to the environment. And so we are 6 years down the road. We probably, if we didn't go through those steps, could have been under construction at the moment. We all wouldn't be sitting here. But here we are, and I think it's important that we go through these steps. In the 2017 election, my opponents were against the port. I debated them on the merits of the port, and I gave an undertaking at the time that I would continue to focus on the concerns that were raised, and in particular on that of the environment. And I can say to you that I personally feel comfortable that if we are going to stay in cruise tourism, we need the piers, and we also need the enhancement on the cargo port. And I feel that the way that this team is approaching it and the mitigating factors that are being presented to us this evening on the coral relocation and the coral generation is by far the best opportunity we will have to do this in a very sustainable and with the least amount of impact possible to the only place, and I think we can all agree with that, to the only place on the island that we can put the cargo and cruise port. So I want to say thank you to the team from Virgin Island and our guests. I know that it has not always been a pleasant trip for you, and in my first 4 years I was the king of Caymankind, and would have hoped that you have at least experienced some of our Caymankind. But we thank you for being here. And I want to say that the fact that they are here, and I know that people will say, well, of course they're here. They're going to make money in this project, or this is a business deal. But the truth is that they have projects going on across the world, and major projects much bigger than ours. And so I think that the fact that they're taking the time to be here with us for these weeks, going through each step of this process, bodes well for us. It says that we are engaged at the highest level with them, and that we have their full cooperation. And I truly believe that someday, if it's not by this government, which I feel confident it will be, but someday we have to expand the cargo port and develop our cruise berthing facility, because the status quo just cannot work. And I also feel that this is our best opportunity to do it in a fashion that is economically a sound and feasible deal, and environmentally a very responsible operation. And I feel that when you see tonight the continued work that the Virgin Isle Group will do in restoring our reefs, it is a win-win situation for us all. And so I want to thank you again for coming out. For those of you who are streaming live with us, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that no matter where you are, whether you are convinced that you cannot support this and you will be voting no on December 19th, or whether you need more information, or you feel convinced that yes, you are voting no. Whatever the reason you are here or streaming with us this evening, I hope that you take away something from this evening's presentation, and I am comfortable in supporting the wishes of the people come December 19th, when the people of our islands make a choice on this very important matter. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Honorable Joey Hill. I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Rosa Harris, Director of Tourism, for being here this evening. I'll invite to the podium at this time Honorable Premier for his speech.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good evening, everyone. Please don't worry, folks. I'm not about to give any speech. I give quite enough of them. Some say too many. I just want to welcome everybody here this evening and say thank you all for turning out. And to those of you who are joining us via live streaming, thank you all for doing so. The minister's done an excellent job, really, of setting out the case. And so I don't really intend to say a great deal. We are holding this series of meetings to inform everyone as best we can about the project, about the reasons for the project as well. There is, unfortunately, a massive amount of misinformation out there, no matter how much we do or how hard we try. But I think this evening, as in the other meetings, you will have an opportunity to understand better the reason for the project. The government has not entered into this exercise lightly. No government wants to engage in a controversial project. We started this more than 6 years ago on the basis of not one but two manifesto pledges for the 2013 and 2017 elections. And we have now invested more than $9 million in getting the project to this point. So this is not something that we are being flippant about at all. A great deal of thought, work, research has gone into bringing us to this point. Not to mention what the preferred bidder, Verdant Isle Port Partners, have themselves invested to get us to this point. So over the course of this evening, via the various videos and the presentations, you will be able to understand, I think, better the reason for the project, see and hear what our cruise visitors are saying about being tendered ashore, understand better what the cruise companies are saying and their reasons for the pier, understand better the financial viability of the project and the basis of the arrangement that the government has entered into or is prepared to enter into with Verdant Isle Port Partners. Understand more about how we are proposing to manage the carrying capacity of the island with respect to the proposed increase or projected increase of visitors in terms of both infrastructure and attractions, and indeed how we better spread the increase of cruise passengers over the course of every week, every month in the year, rather than have these peak numbers at certain key points, particularly during the winter months. And to also understand, I hope, what the government is proposing to do with respect to the environmental impact in terms of mitigation of that. So we do hope that you leave this presentation this evening better informed and thereby better able to make your choice on the 19th of December. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. I'll now invite to the podium Honorable Moses Kekernel.
Thank you, Sabrina. Very pleasant good evening to everyone. It's not an enviable position when you have to speak after Minister Hugh and Premier. Not a whole lot left to say. I believe the overarching issue that I'll just say a few words about is that from my ministry, which has driven this project forward, we had a responsibility from 2 cycles ago, over 6 years ago, to look at opportunity for the Cayman Islands. And we knew that there were 2 pillars of the economy, tourism being one of those, and our responsibility was to look at how we managed that and how we took advantage of the opportunity for the country itself. What we found was, when we looked at potential, was that we needed a new airport. And everyone knows we talked about a new airport for a long period of time. The airport is in the 2nd phase of the business plan now, lengthening the runway and increasing the area for planes to park and the aprons. So that has been a very strong success story for the country. It's flattened out our seasonality for our stayover visitors. We also realized that we had an opportunity with cruise that if we wanted to stay in the business, we had to make a decision of how we flattened out the seasonality and took advantage of the season that really was not creating jobs and work for people in the industry. Basically, the summer months, and when you have a business that only works productively for 7-8 months out of the year, it's very difficult to plan on a yearly basis. So we took the opportunity to look at how we could do what the major cruise line said was needed to attract summer business, which was build a cruise berthing facility. But the government didn't have the money to build a cruise berthing facility. So we have been involved in a PPP driven by PricewaterhouseCoopers business plan of how we actually put this together. The responsibility of the government is to find balance. And the balance that everyone in this room is searching for is the best economic outcome with the least amount of environmental impact. And that, I believe, as Caymanians, is the key word, balance of working together. Meetings like this are very informative, streaming is very informative, but the feedback and the recommendations and how can we do this in the best possible way for the country is the reason why we interact and try to get as much information as possible. I believe that we've made tremendous strides over the years, moving the piers into deeper water, smaller footprint. Are we satisfied at this point? No, we're looking for other opportunities to reach a better balance. But at the end of the day, the country needs, and we all want, to create a better opportunity for generations to come, protecting our environment and creating economic opportunity. So that's what tonight's meeting is about. That's what it's going to continue to be about. And we have brought a lot of experts over and over to answer questions. We intend to bring more as they are needed and provide other ways of doing things better. So thank you all very much for coming out tonight. We look forward to the questions. Hopefully we can answer them all tonight, and if not, we'll certainly find answers and get them to you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Honorable Colonel. I'll now direct your attention to the screen where we will be giving you two short videos. One will be on the cargo port and the other will be on a tourist video as it pertains to the reactions to the tendering process. So please direct your attention to the screen.
I've been at the port from 1995. All these vessels keep on getting bigger. We are having more and more actually containers coming in. If you look at the figures from back in 2010, we actually had about 22,000 TEUs coming in. And at the end of actually 2018, we were up at actually 30,000. So this is a fairly large increase in only 8 years. So if we continue with that same actually trend, another 8 years, we're going to be 35, 37% more, and we just do not have that space as it is now for us to keep on doing this. We cannot move all the containers that come in off of a vessel from the dock up to the cargo center within a single night. All of the actually increased volume, it is just not making it possible anymore.
Makes it really rough for a wheelchair to get on and off, especially if you get some waves.
I would prefer a dock to be freely go on and off this boat as I wish.
Having a dock would be more convenient.
Many long lines.
I said it was very hot in the tender coming over, so it was not fun. It was hot, but dripping. It was just too hot coming across.
I'm just going to stay on the ship and avoid the chaos.
Yeah.
It just really cuts down your ability to be on the island longer.
We've been with Norwegian many times, and we've never had this.
There's no doubt about it. There needs to be a pier here.
Well, the tendering is short. It's just that the lines are long, so the pier would be better.
We've been in line for over half an hour, and it goes all the way back. You can't even see the end of the line, and we've been in it for half an hour. Last tender's supposed to be at 3.
I would be in favor of the pier because it would eliminate these lines waiting for the tender ship boats to come.
We've been standing here for a really long time.
We had to tender in, and it took us a really long time to get off the boat. So our excursions were supposed to start at 8. We didn't get here until 9:30.
I don't like to be tendered, and I don't have to like to stand in this line like this, stand in this hot sun, and it makes it easier.
Because nobody stops for more than 8 hours. You end up spending 3 hours doing the tendering process. So actually, it would be advantageous for the community because they would make more money because people would be on the island longer instead of standing in lines.
And now, it's the fact that we're supposed to be able to have a longer time, and it's really shortening up our ability to spend more time on the island because now we're in this giant line to tender back.
I've never had to wait in line like this for a tender, never.
Well, we barely made our excursion, honestly. They said, we're glad you made it.
Walk off the ship and onto the dock. Yeah, that would be best.
I will now invite to the podium Mr. Russell Benford of Burden Isle to introduce himself officially and a video, which will be followed by a PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Would like to thank you again for being here, Premier, Deputy Premier, elected officials. It's an honor to be here tonight. We would like to show you a short video from the partners. Thank you.
This project really is about, in many ways, changing the model from an old model that's been in place for decades, ships coming to a destination. This project is about modernization and creating an adequate facility that allows the arrival of those tourists to come in an efficient way. Grand Cayman is a pretty efficient airport, and it manages efficiently through design and experience. All of the aircraft coming in, debarking, embarking, customs, immigration, all the procedures necessary, and it does it in an efficient way on a relatively small footprint. Today, in the arrival of the cruise ships, the ships arrive and they anchor in various locations around Georgetown. Tenders coming out to the ships, a long process to debark, and that's the process that we've got in place today for the cruise ship tourists, and that's approximately 1.8 million people. 600,000 air guests coming into a state-of-the-art airport, 1.8 million cruise tourists coming into fundamentally a model that was created 100 years ago. The group called Verdant is basically 4 companies: Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited, Carnival Corporation, Orion, and McAlpine. 2 cruise companies and 2 companies very much involved in construction and building, particularly in the coastal marine environment.
We believe the development of the cruise port facility will provide for additional economic impact opportunities for Grand Cayman, one by the additional spend we believe that guests and crew will have by being alongside compared to tender operations. And 2, more importantly, we believe the direct economic impact by having additional cruise arrivals to Grand Cayman will be significant. Having an enhanced welcome center arrivals, having berthing alongside are key components that we believe provide us the capability in the interest that we have in working with Grand Cayman.
Today, the larger ships can't go to Grand Cayman. It's just simply not possible to manage the volume of tourists that are on the large ships. So it's really the nature of that product attracts a much more affluent customer, and we think that very much aligns with Grand Cayman itself.
The project was the idea to upgrade both the cruise facility and the cargo berthing in Georgetown, Grand Cayman. So we've been working with them to come up with the best design that basically increases the size of the cargo pier capacity, which is vitally important to the needs of the Cayman Islands. On the cruise side, in building 2 finger piers that are 4 berth oasis capable, you are increasing the size of the ships that can come into Grand Cayman.
The consortium takes on entirely the risk of the project. We are designing it, building it, executing against this contract, and we're funding and financing it, and all of the funding and financing is the responsibility of the consortium. So there's effectively 0 risk, 0 responsibility to the government of Grand Cayman or the people of Grand Cayman.
You know, there's this whole conversation about it's going to cost people money. This is 100% financed by this consortium, and it's paid back through head tax collected by the cruise line.
I think we're all worried about the impact on the environment, and our intention is to replace 10 times the coral that we've removed to create the facility.
We brought in a specialized team that has worked in Grand Cayman named Polaris. They've done a lot of coral restoration, including in Grand Cayman. The Grand Cayman results are 89% success rate since they've started.
This is not a small project. It's going to take a number of months to move the corals. We have worked on several ship grounding cases here in Grand Cayman where we helped restore the reef. We feel like we're very qualified. We've worked on some really large projects, and we have skilled scientists, engineers, and frankly, artists, because it really involves all three of those aspects. It's not just a scientific endeavor. It's not an engineering endeavor. It's also an artistic endeavor. Our goal is to make a reef that looks like a reef, using all natural materials, with healthy corals that lay people and even scientists after a period of time could not tell the difference. On this case, we've done this before. We've thought to go small and move reef sections individually with small boats to stay out of the port's way, have a number of boats working side by side, moving that over to the donor area. And then when we start moving corals over, our aim is to be out of the 10-acre dredge footprint area in about 6 months.
For this project, we will be working on coral relocation as the part where we're taking out the direct impacts from where the dredging and the pier will be constructed. And then the other aspect, because we do know that there will be some loss due to coral relocation, we have decided to use this microfragmenting technique to increase overall coral cover within Grand Cayman. And we think that that will increase it by 10 times.
We're working with a group led by Dr. Vaughan, who's been at the forefront of advancing the coral microfragmenting planting technology.
Grand Cayman has got a beautiful natural resource, and they know they want to share that with the world. To do so, we have to be able to help make sure the natural resources has all the help we can, and that is with technology. We have the technology now to put to good use in natural resource restoration. That's what this is. And we can make something beautiful. We have that technology. It'd be a shame to not apply it. Some of the biggest questions people had is, can we do this at scale? And so we looked to start a project that was plant 1 million corals. Not only is it basically a good idea, it's our mission, it's our vision, and as I like to say sometimes, it's the recipe. Not only do we make many pieces, but each piece grows back to size in record time, which is very unusual.
Our goal is no net loss on this project. We've engaged Dr. Vaughan to bring his research and knowledge to Grand Cayman. There's a lot of coral. We understand the impact to that. But our responsibility is to move that coral and to supplement that program with adding Dr. Vaughan's coral restoration process through microfragmentation.
What's great about the microfragmentation technique and some of the other coral reskinning things that we do is we're able to see this actively happen before our very eyes. We can see it happen in a matter of months with each coral that we cut and plant.
I've seen some of the damage that anchors from 4 to 6 cruise ships do per day out there for years. There's a lot of severe anchor damage out there, and frankly, if that could be stopped in any way, that would be a positive.
That is a big negative with the current situation where the ships drop anchors and the chains drag and the anchors drag and they've destroyed acres of coral. There's a benefit there, particularly in the long term, because if you're not anchoring, then the coral has the opportunity to recover and regenerate over time. And obviously, it's not overnight. So there is a positive there with the project. The project brings a number of positives.
We'd like to work with the community down here in Grand Cayman. There's a lot of scientific expertise here. There's a lot of dive expertise here. We've worked with some of the members of the community in the past. We have relationships with them and are looking forward to doing that again. All the techniques are proven. The survival has happened, good survival. We've seen it right here in Grand Cayman. We can absolutely do it. It's just a matter of effort and a matter of doing it safely.
We look as an advantage of working for this project in the Cayman Islands is that there is a close partnership with the DOE and the government on making sure that this is a sustainable project. One of the first things we will do is get out and do what we're calling the coral gridding. We're basically just putting divers in the water, and we'll be really mapping out, almost pretty much by hand, all of the coral. The primary relocation area is approximately a little more than half a mile north of the project site. And there we'll be placing large boulders on the bottom as a foundation or a substrate for the corals to be attached to, so that we'll have new coral structures. Dredging the area of the port is not a contributor to the sand at 7 Mile Beach. 7 Mile Beach is what's known as a pocket beach, and essentially the sand there is somewhat self-contained. In the port itself, that area just is not a contributor of sediment to 7 Mile Beach.
There's a total commitment to make this a really great environmental success. We changed the way we're going to dredge the project. And initially we were looking at hydraulic dredging, but we changed the dredge process now to mechanical dredging. And we're going to have real-time sediment monitoring on the project.
It's important that the pier is on pilings and not a filled structure extending from shore to allow waves and currents to move through the structure as if it's not even there. Because it's on piles, the changes to the hydrodynamics should be relatively minimal.
We are undertaking everything we can within the framework of the port infrastructure and the guest and arrival welcome center. And we need to work very closely with the government of the Cayman Islands and the broader community to ensure that as these master plan enhancements for broader Grand Cayman and the road works and so forth are taken into account, and ensuring that we can continue to deliver that experience as the port arrivals may grow over time.
Our high season is the summer, from May through to October, and that's where we get higher paying customers and much higher yields. And it's extremely complementary with the Grand Cayman high season, which is in the winter. By allowing these ships to come into and berth in Grand Cayman, it effectively means that during the summer months, where today there's not a lot of tourists coming from the cruise ships, there will be more tourists coming from the cruise ships. Therefore, it's going to increase the number of tourists overall for the year, but on a daily basis, there will be no increase.
We believe that this provides a great enhancement to the arrivals experience for our guests and crew, and allows us to continue to count on Grand Cayman well into the future as we explore and bring additional new large ships to this market.
That really is the essence of this project, and that's why we're hopeful that the proposal to move ahead with the cruise pier is approved.
Thank you all very much for coming tonight and watching the video. I have a short presentation that I'm going to run through. A lot of the topics that I'm going to touch on in the presentation were covered by the premier, the deputy premier, and the 3 videos that you saw. And I want to move quickly to the point where we can get to questions and answers. So I apologize in advance if I move through it too quickly, but we can always go back to a particular slide if you want to see it. Again, this partnership, the Virgin Isle Port Partners, are comprised of the 4 groups, which is Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Orion, and McAlpine. We have representatives from all 4 companies here tonight, and they are all these gentlemen are sitting on the front row and are here to answer your questions for you. Again, as we talked about, this project is really a cruise pier project and a cargo enhancement project. We're going to build 2 new cruise piers. And very important part of this project is that we are going to increase the cargo port by approximately 30%. We're also going to upgrade the tender facility, so the tenders will not be completely going away. We're going to actually enhance that and really provide a very, very nice arrival area for our guests when they come into Cayman. This is a really nice illustration of what the new facility is going to look like. If you look on your left-hand side, you'll see the cruise welcome facility. You'll see the buses and the taxis. In the center is a nice welcome area for our guests that'll have shops and restrooms and Wi-Fi. And then on the other side, you'll see the increased cargo facility. A lot more room for cargo, a lot more room for our cruise guests. And very important is that these 2 areas now will be separate. So you won't have a combination of the areas like you have today. It'll be a safer area. It'll be a more pleasant area for both the folks that work in cargo and for your cruise guests. This is another illustration of what the welcome area is going to look like. We'll have shops, restaurants, and a lot of local vendors that can really highlight some of the products that make Cayman what it is. A few things that have been touched on a number of times in the videos, and I'll say it again. The great thing about this project is that there's no financial risks to the people or the government of the Cayman Islands. This project is being financed by Verdant Partners. We are taking on all the risks. The government is not a guarantor of the project in any way. This is totally going to be financed by the partners, and the debt service payments to repay the loan over 25 years comes from the head tax. Every cruise guest that comes into the country will pay a head tax. A portion of that revenue will go to pay the debt service, and another portion of that revenue will go to the maintenance and operations of the piers. So for the next 25 years, what that means is there's going to be no cost to the government for the operation, maintenance, the insurance. I know people have asked if, God forbid, we have a hurricane hit or a major storm, the piers are damaged, the facility is damaged, the government would not have the responsibility to pay for those repairs. The group would. It would be Verdant's responsibility to do that. We would have insurance that would be paid for by the proceeds of the head tax. And then last but not least, very important, after 25 years, once the debt is retired, the project, the piers, everything will be turned over to the government, and that improvement, that $250 million U.S. improvement, will belong to the people of the Cayman Islands. The port will be, as it is today, run and managed by the Port Authority, by the Cayman Islands. People have asked the question, since it's a royal and it's a carnival project, will we have a say-so into berthing preferences and which ships come in at which time? The answer is no. We will submit our requests to the government just like we do today, and the government will have control of the cargo, the customs, the berthing schedules, the fee schedules, even to the point of who's going to operate the retail shops. The Port Authority, your management structure, the folks here today that run the port are going to be the same people that are going to run the facility once the new facility is built and created. Again, another illustration of what that welcome area is going to look like. We really put an emphasis on, shaded areas, nice air-conditioned areas. If you think about the folks in the video who talked about the heat, standing in line, we wanted to get people out of the sun, get them into a place that's really comfortable, and very important, we want to have folks pull up to a nice facility that encourages more and more people to get off the ship and see what's going on, to spend some time on the island and spend some money with the small businesses and entrepreneurs here. Again, another visual of the cargo port. Once you leave here tonight, you'll see that area is lit up, and the folks who work there in the cargo facility are working at night. They'll have to shut down that facility, clean up in time for the cruise ships that arrive in the morning. Once you have a new facility that's separated, it gives more time for those folks to work. They hopefully won't have to work as much overtime. They don't have to deal with the cleanup and separation every day. You'll have two separate areas for cruise and cargo, which will be very nice and a lot safer and more efficient than what's there now. As I think in the video Barry talked about, or someone talked about, over time how the schematic has changed, how the designs have changed for the pier. What this slide shows is in the red, you see where the initial piers were going to be located. They were a lot closer to the shore. They were in more shallow water. They were in areas that had a little bit more coral. We listened to the feedback from the community. We made adjustments. The actual apron is smaller than it was with the original plans. The piers are in different locations because we wanted to minimize the impact to the seabed and minimize the impact to the coral. What this slide is really talking about and illustrating is that when you have a situation like we have today where ships anchor, you have a constant sort of scouring of the seabed. So for the last 30, 40 years, as cruise ships have come in and anchored, the area that they park the ships and drop the anchors, if you look at the seabed, it's really been scored over the years from those anchors and the chains. And once you have the piers built, it allows up to 4 cruise ships a day to come in and tie up to the new pier, and you'll see a significantly reduced amount of anchoring out there. And so it should create a much healthier environment for sea life and for the life that's on the floor of the ocean. We as a company, cruise industry, and certainly this partnership is committed to strong environmental standards, sustainability. Your government, the Premier, Deputy Premier, everybody involved in this process from day one has really stressed the importance of the environment. We know that, you know, our guests want to come to Cayman because of the beautiful diving and the ocean life that's here. They're going to want to continue to do that. So we've made a commitment and put together a world-class team of experts that we talked about in the video, and a lot of those folks are here today. Those folks that are going to be doing the coral relocation, the Plant a Million Coral Group. These are folks that have actually worked here in Cayman, here in the Cayman Islands, have done projects here in Grand Cayman, and they're here today and are happy to answer questions about what they've done here and what they plan to do with this project. We have also suggested, this is not a requirement, but the fourth bullet on that screen or circle there talks about an independent environmental panel. And what we've suggested is that we put together a group of independent folks that can take a look at what we're doing through design and construction and oversight for years to come, just to make sure that we are doing the things and we continue to do the things that we've talked about and that we promised the government. Someone who's not a representative of Verdant or the cruise lines, to really just provide expertise and give their point of view about what's going on with this project. Barry talked about in the video, the Polaris group, Barry, I think you said those are the folks that are doing the project in Cayman now? They had previously done a project. We brought them back, and they've done a really successful project here. Sea Ventures, Reef Tech, and Plant a Million Corals. And you saw Dr. David Vaughn in the video talk about his Plant a Million Corals project and sort of what he's doing globally. These partners have worked on projects together since 2005. Over 70 projects throughout the Caribbean, the Florida Keys, BVI, and most importantly here in Grand Cayman. So we can take a look at the data, we can look at different examples of reef relocation and restoration projects. You have a really good example of what can be done right here. And I encourage all of you to take a look at that and ask questions about what's actually happened here and what these companies have done here in Grand Cayman. This slide is just a quick run through of projects since 2006, so really for the last 13 years, starting in Hawaii and most recently in Puerto Rico. You know, Dr. Vaughn in the video, unfortunately, he's not here today, and it's really a great experience when Dr. Vaughn can be here because he can talk firsthand about, you know, his vision and what he's really done over a 40-year career. He is the pioneer in micro fragmenting technology, and the video showed really how that works. One of the other great things about that is in a lot of coral projects that you see where transplantation takes place, there's typically one or two species of coral. Dr. Vaughn has been successful with 28 different varieties of coral, which really will result in a vibrant, diverse coral bed and a lot more activity, sea life, and diversity brings healthier ecosystems. As we talked about in the video, our goal and our plan is to plant 10 times the amount of coral than is actually affected by the project. So Dr. Vaughn and his group will be here if the project is approved, will be here for many years, planting coral, growing new coral, and we also like to install or build a demonstration lab where we can teach these techniques to entrepreneurs and small business owners here in Grand Cayman, and bring classes of children to actually see with their own eyes and touch with their own hands, you know, what it's like to actually grow coral, and just teach our young people about the environment, maybe spark some interest in maybe future careers that they could be able to, as young Caymanians, learn about this type of thing and continue the work that Dr. Vaughn and others have started in the Caribbean and plan to do here in Cayman. This is an interesting slide. If you look to the far left, you'll see very small pieces. I think Dr. Vaughn said those are about the size of a baseball. I don't know if that's correct. These pieces start from the small fragments that you saw him saw, and in 6 months they're about the size of a baseball. The middle slide shows there are 8 pieces, and that shows what those coral look like in about 6 months. They're attached to boulders, and they're quite large at that point. And in 1 to 2 years, that middle slide actually turns into the slide on the right. You'll see a fully grown, large, fully grown coral head that's healthy. And Dr. Vaughn has been able to do this in 1 or 2 years, and typically this will take between 25 and 75 years in the wild. So been really some innovative technology and the use of science, and Dr. Vaughn he's dedicated his life to this. And his first project he started, he told me, in 1974 right here in Cayman, and he's really excited about coming back to show how far he's come in those 25 years. The next couple slides show Cancun. This is after a storm, after a hurricane, what the seabed looked like, and this is that reef bed, that sea floor after 3, 5, and 8 years of plantings. Very diverse, very healthy, and just a completely different look than it was 8 years before. The video talked about the silt management program. That's very important. I'm not going to go into detail, but we've had lots of questions in some of the other sessions about 7 Mile Beach, some of the other beaches, and how is this project, the dredging and the silt, how could it possibly damage those beaches? So we've changed our initial approach to silt management. We're going to use a very controlled method and make sure that we're protecting the environment at all times, and then the beaches that are very important to you all. One of the very important things is that we will have a real-time silt management program. That's something that's fairly rare, at least in my experience. Most places don't have this, but your environmental experts and regulatory folks are going to be able to manage and review this stuff real-time every single day. Look at silt levels, look at turbidity or the cloudiness of the water, and if there are issues, they can ask us to stop, ask us to amend, to change what we're doing on a daily basis. So, and that's very important that we transmit and we share the data every single day about what's going on in this project. Again, this slide shows the beaches, and I know a lot of people have talked about the EIA in 2015, and we have some folks here today in the room who can speak to that issue if you have any questions about that. Again, the pier is built on piles, as you see in this slide. So it's not a solid piece of concrete that goes into the ocean. Water flows underneath and in between the piers. There is movement of water. There's wildlife there. So this is not going to be a dam type of structure that's built. This will be an ecosystem that's water's moving and life is moving underneath these piers. Again, a nice visual of the 2 new finger piers, the cargo and the welcome center and the cruise facility. We had a really nice session last week with some folks who were really curious about the economic impact. And what our data shows is through this project, we'll create approximately 200 new construction jobs, from welders to pipe fitters to people who pour concrete, will drive the piles. This is an incredible opportunity for employment here in Cayman. In addition to that, once the pier is built, we think around 500 tourism sector jobs will be created, and not just jobs, but also small businesses, new small businesses, expansion of small businesses, and lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs to create and grow their businesses because of this increase in cruise tourism. We anticipate we're going to grow. Right now we're at about 1.9 million cruise passengers per year, or you are. Cayman is about 1.9. We think after the project is built, your number of cruise visitors will increase to about 2.5 million. And one of the things, that's a 30% increase, which is significant, obviously, but it's really important to note, as Michael talked about in the video, your peak season here is in the winter months. You're really ramping up for your peak season now. For Royal Caribbean, especially as it relates to the big ships, our peak season is in the summertime. Those are family ships. Those are grandparents, parents, and children that cruise together. So while your total number of cruise passengers will increase, what you'll see is a flattening out really of that curve belt that shows the seasonality. So we don't expect any more than the maximum numbers of passengers that come here on a busy day. But what you'll see is in the months that are typically off months or downtime, when people are not working at all because there are no cruise guests, you'll start to see those folks come in. So that increase of 30% will fill in the gaps of the low season here and really make for a much more standardized type of cruise passengers or guests. They'll come 12 months a year instead of in the peak seasons. It was interesting as we drove down, we were talking about trying to imagine what the traffic looks like. And I showed you in the slides where the buses, the cars, the taxis are now not queued up and parked on the street, but they're actually in a new facility in parking lots. So the traffic here should be a lot better. The circulation should be much improved. And we are working with the government on the Georgetown master plan. We're seeking input from them, and we want to make sure that we're working in collaboration to make sure that our project does not negatively impact, but in fact improves the circulation of traffic in and around Georgetown. There was an interesting, I don't know who caught that in the video, but this picture comes from one of our cabins. The large ships, and for Royal Caribbean there we call them Oasis class ships. Those are the 6,000 passenger ships and above. We collect data on all of our passengers. We know sort of where they come from, what they like. One of the interesting stats that we pulled was that the folks who sail on the big ships, their household income is approximately on average about 20% more than the other folks who sail with Royal Caribbean. And what that means is when the big ships come, they bring more passengers, and those passengers spend more money than the cruise guests who come today. In 2018, our data shows that the cruise industry had a $240 million impact on the economy of the Cayman Islands. If the project is constructed, by 2023 and thereafter, we anticipate an increase of $100 million per year, or about $340 million of economic impact from the cruise industry. People have asked questions about what happens if the project is approved, if the referendum on December 19th, if the decision is made to move forward with this project. We don't break ground on December 20th. We don't put a shovel in the ground. We have a lot more work to do. We're really at the beginning phases, so there are more studies to do. There are just a lot more requirements that the government has for us to go through before this project actually starts. But so December 19th, if the project is approved, it will really mark the beginning of a long process to go through. But we do want to break ground in 2020, and we would like to finish the project in 2022. Again, we feel like this is a win-win partnership. There's no financial risk to the government or the people of the Cayman Islands. We're responsive and responsible environmentally, and we've put together a world-class team of experts that are going to bring the best that the industry has to bear for this project here in Cayman. It's going to create jobs and economic opportunities, and most importantly, last but not least, we're very happy that you're here. Thank you all for coming out tonight, for taking time away from your families, and we look forward to your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can tonight. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Benford. Now it's that time of the evening. Yes, questions and answer time. If you haven't been given a piece of paper yet or your nice magazine, please do so by raising your hand. And like I said, there are refreshments to the back. Please feel to partake of those refreshments during this question and answer period. First question. What is the largest piece of coral that can be moved?
Hi everyone. My name is Barry Loudermilk with the Ryan Marine Group. I am also a representative of Vert Nile Port Partners. So our highly skilled coral relocation team, just a little bit about them. It's a group called Polaris, as well as Sea Ventures, and forgot the other name, sorry. I've been talking, Reef Tech, sorry. They are responsible for probably more coral, have touched and moved more coral than anyone in the world as a group. So we're very pleased to have Dr. Hudson, the team with Polaris, and the guys out of Puerto Rico that are going to be a part of this great project. But to answer your question, the largest piece that we're going to try to move on this job is probably around 3 tons. So if you can imagine what a 3-ton block looks like, it's probably 3 or 4 of these tables that we will basically go in and pin the coral, remove it, and on those pins we attach ballast bags that are filled with air. We never surface this, and we move it through the water to its actual relocation site. Yes.
We'll ask you please to write your questions so that we can get through as much, and if there's other explanation that is required, we will try and answer them. But for the sake of getting through as much questions, we ask you not to shout out, please. Thank you. Why are you so afraid of hearing our voices? What peers-reviewed articles has Dr. Vaughn written? Where is his PhD from, and what is it in?
So unfortunately, Dr. Vaughn is not here tonight, so I can't answer that, but whoever asks the question, I will get the answer to. Is that fair enough? All right.
What happens if after 25 years, the cruise passenger head tax has not covered the cost of the pier? Who pays the rest?
Thank you very much for the question. The 25-year license period is looked at in the preferred bidder agreement as the time that is needed to repay the $200 million CI dollars. But if, God forbid, in the middle of this, we have a hurricane that affects 2 years of income, it will be the option of the government and Verdant to extend that period of time, because the only way that Verdant gets paid for this is by people actually coming to Grand Cayman and the head count taken and the payment being made to the Port Authority, and then the Port Authority is the accountant and the receiver and has first call on revenue, and they pay the money then that is to come out of that to Verdant.
What is the deepest dredging that will take place? Some people are saying it's almost a 40-foot hole.
Hi there, Peter Ranger, Chief Project Manager, Major Projects Office. It seems to me that we got a lot of the same questions coming over and over again. To explain the dredge pocket, and Barry will tell me if I'm wrong. Basically, it's 36 feet from the top of the sea, 11 meters. If you go to Georgetown Harbour, you've got a 16-foot depth of water, so the deepest dredge pocket is 20 feet. As you move further offshore, it's getting shallower and shallower. I think, Barry, we need to get more information, release a section or a 3D to show people it's not this 30-foot, 60-foot chasm. Deepest amount of excavation is 20 feet, and then reducing after that to zero. Yeah.
Thank you. Where are the Georgetown Central constituents? If they are not here, how will they make an informed decision?
Just let me say, we are doing everything we possibly can to get as much information out there as possible. That's why we're streaming this live, why we've streamed all of the other meetings live, why we attempt to get Radio Cayman to carry the meetings. They can't carry all of them, but they've carried some, and we hope that they'll carry some more. So we're doing everything we can to get the information out. In my constituency and the constituency of Prospect, we have hand-delivered these informative booklets to every single house, whether people can vote or not in that constituency. Georgetown Central is not represented by someone within the government. It's represented by Mr. Kenneth Bryan, who is vehemently opposed to the project and I presume, therefore, will not do a great deal to spread government's message about it. Hence the reason why we've held the meeting here. We can only give people the opportunity to access the information. We can't force it on people. So if anyone has any suggestions as how best we can get the information out there, we would be most grateful to have that.
Can you break down the project cost? Cargo side, cruise side, dredging, piers, coral.
All right, Peter wants me to have a go at this. So to kind of give you guys the project cost, we're about 250 million total cost. Sorry, US. Sorry. Our dredging cost is somewhere in the 15 million US cost. Our core relocation is around 10 million. No, US. And what's the other question?
Cargo, cruise, dredging, piers, and coral.
Our cargo facility is around 35 to 40 million US, and the remaining is the marine structures as well as the upland development for the cruise facility. Yeah? Okay. I'd love to, but I want to make sure it's right and factual. So if you'll give me some time to go back, we'll be more than happy to post the Dr. Vaughn information as well as the information you just asked on the Verdun Isle website. And everybody can see all of it on verdunisle.ky.
Sorry, Barry, that's a yes and no. So they are preferred bidder just now. They have to go for a permitting process. They have to get a correlation relocation plan, a dredge management plan. At the end of that process, we go to what's called financial close. When it's financial close, you'll get the figures. But $200 million is your bid. I'm sure me and the Premier would love you to fix that price now. And if you want to do that, then that's okay.
What is the real situation with the size of the cargo dock? Is it large enough?
The answer is yes for the next 10 to 15 years. And that was part of Verdant's bid. Originally in the ISFT, it was a bigger cargo dock. So if you look at what's out there today, the cargo yard's about 4.7 acres of thereabouts, but in the daytime it drops to 2.7. So in effect, if you look at the cargo yard from what it's going to have in the daytime, it's actually 100% more, Barry, 30% more at night. So on all the calculations and the growth of cargo that Will has looked at, and Joey, we're going to get about 10 to 15 years. So the answer is yes for the next 10 to 15 years. Beyond that, we'd have to build out.
I understand that cruise tourism will decline if we don't create a first-class pier. What has history shown us as the impact of declining cruise passengers?
Hi, good evening. So I'm David Candid, representing Carnival Corporation and part of the Verdun Isle Port Partners. I think what we've shared before is part of the interest that we have in joining the consortium, in particular here working with the Grand Cayman government and the community of Grand Cayman, is the future and where we're looking at. We have a tremendous platform of new builds, and many of those new builds, a certain large percentage of those, are the class of ships which today Royal Caribbean has in the Caribbean market. And those ships we are not planning to tender. So we had our first delivery of what we call the XL platform to our German brand, AIDA, last December. Next year, we have that first class of ship come here to the region in the Caribbean under Carnival Cruise Lines in the Mardi Gras. And we're not planning to tender or bring that vessel to any destinations which require tendering operations. So we do have a growth platform into the future with many more of those ships coming into the marketplace here in the Caribbean, and we don't plan to bring those to any facilities that don't have berthing alongside. So I think the question is when that is, or when you see a decline. Obviously, we're a big user today of the cruise port in Grand Cayman. But if you look into the future, it's a matter of time of where you want to be in the marketplace. And moving forward, if you look at the other destinations in the Caribbean, you're seeing that they are making inroads into the infrastructure to be able to accommodate for those large ships and an enhanced experience for the existing cruise passengers. Russell, if you want to-
Why are we paying $500,000 US per year to a scientist who has not grown more than 5 cards of 1 diameter in size when we have the DOE, the CCMI, and eco divers? Why are we paying $500,000 US per year to a scientist who has not grown more than 5 cards of 1 diameter in size when we have the DOE, the CCMI, and eco divers?
Sorry, well, Barry, you can jump in. We, the government, aren't paying for that. You're paying for it. So that's the answer to the question.
Yeah, Barry, I think that answers the question. Verdant is paying for that, not the government or the people of Cayman.
500,000, I don't know where the number came from, but.
Let me just add that there was a question earlier about Dr. David Vaughn. I didn't know the answer. I just Googled him. His university was Pedigree University. It's Rutgers, which is highly recognized as a very good university. And all of his information is online. So Google the name, and I think you'll be quite impressed with the work that he's done.
Given that this project has been in the work for several years and a repeat request for more information, further research, etc., why not put a hold on this project to instill confidence and put in the effort to gain the support of the public?
I don't know at what point we would ever be able to put sufficient information out there to convince those who don't believe this is a good idea to do it. As I said, we've spent 6 years to get to this point. And I was shocked yesterday when I saw the numbers because I was thinking we were around 5 million. We've spent over $9 million on the project so far. There is, I believe, more than enough information out there for people to make a decision as to whether or not they think this is a good idea for Cayman. We won't have all of the information, but certainly the people who are opposed to the project feel passionately it's a terrible idea. No matter how much information we give those people, I don't think we'll ever change their minds. For those people who are agnostic or unsure about whether or not they think this is a good idea, I think there is enough information there. The reality is, if you don't think that this is the direction that Cayman should go, then you should vote no. The government will abide by whatever the decision of the people, whatever that decision is. We have, as I said when I made my introductory remarks, we have not entered into this lightly. Truth of the matter is, had we believed this was going to be anywhere near as controversial as it has now become, we probably would not have even touched it. But we campaigned on the basis of this, the need for this, not just 1 but 2 election cycles, and we have a clear mandate to proceed with it, and which is what we are doing. For Cayman, we have to make a serious choice. There are almost 5,000 Caymanians who are directly involved in the cruise industry. That is, you compare the percentage of Caymanians involved in the cruise industry to those involved in stayover, and it's not even close. Caymanians, despite the efforts of many governments over the years, are loath, it seems, to do jobs related to stayover tourism. But we own this industry. Caymanians own the cruise industry. Caymanians are employed in significant numbers in it. There are many Caymanian entrepreneurs. Ask yourself how many Caymanians own any hotel or condominium along the 7 Mile Beach or anywhere else. Those are not Caymanian owned, by and large. We own this piece of the tourism industry. So, to me, the choice is stark. There is not a single jurisdiction in the Caribbean or Central America, besides the Cayman Islands, that does not have a modern cruise pier. Cayman is a highly attractive destination, probably, is it the top? If we're not at the top, we're very close to the top. And therefore, there's strong demand for Grand Cayman to be on the cruise company's itineraries. But we have been told for years, and you've just heard it from the lion's mouth, that the business is changing. The companies are moving to larger ships. Those of you who were here at the start would have seen what cruise passengers are saying about the tendering experience. Cruise companies, like any other business, want to make sure their customers are happy. And if the customers tell them this is not a good experience, they are going to react to it. They already have. None of the big ships call here because the tendering process is impossible. It would take 4 or 5 hours to get them on and off the ships. So for us as a country, we have to make a decision. Do we want to stay in the cruise business in the longer term? If we don't build the cruise port, the business is not going to go away overnight, not even probably in the next year or two. But over time, unless other things change, other factors change, it seems clear to me that we are going to see an increasingly diminishing number of visitors here as the companies move to bigger and bigger ships. So that really is going to be a decision for another premier and another government, is how do we employ, what do we find for those Caymanians now who are engaged in this business, who over time, but not a long period of time, are going to be without jobs. I'll tell you this, my experience in the 19 years I've been elected now and in 3 cabinets, there have been 2 cycles when cruise visitors fell down to about 1.3 million. One was the result of a recession. The other was the result following Hurricane Ivan. It has taken us since 2004, that's when Ivan was, right? To get back to the numbers that we had pre-Ivan. And in that period, the minister referred to the challenges that we had, the frustration and the panic that people who were engaged in or are engaged in the cruise industry had because they were unable to pay their bills, to pay their mortgage, to pay for their cars, to keep their children in school, all of the normal things of life. So if the numbers fall off significantly, we can expect we're going to have the same experience again. Cayman is in a growth and has been in a growth trajectory for the last 3-4 years. And it is so easy for us to forget how hard things were when things are actually good. But there is no status quo in this business. We are not on autopilot. We have to continue to make decisions which track what's happening in the market and respond to those demands. If we don't, we will become redundant. We will fall short of what expectations are, and therefore the business will go elsewhere. That's how I view this, with the benefit of, as I said, 19 years of being close up to what actually makes this place tick, and having dealt countless times and with the complaints and the concerns, and going home in the night worrying yourself sick. What are you going to do? Because your people hold you responsible for them having jobs and economic opportunities. What are you going to do to keep them in work? When we took office in 2013, Caymanian unemployment was at 10.5%. I can't tell you how that felt everywhere you go. Somebody's hammering you. If they're not on the radio, they're in your face. What are you going to do so that I can get a job? That's what I elected you for. Caymanian unemployment is now at 4.8%. And so we don't have those pressures. But that can change very, very swiftly. So the government is not acting irresponsibly or ignoring the reality that there is, no matter what we do in terms of mitigation, going to be some negative environmental impact as a result of this project. What we are saying and what we are trying to do is to mitigate that as far as possible, weighing up that inevitable environmental impact against the positive economic impact, and the need to ensure that our people, not just now, but for the foreseeable future, have a good chance at getting a job, starting a business, raising their families, and living a decent quality of life here. That's what this is all about.
Thank you. At the last meeting held in West Bay, that was on Tuesday evening, there were a few questions that were not able to be posed because time did not permit. Those questions will be uploaded and posted under the F&Q section. If you go to supportourtourism.com, they will be there in the coming days. Which island in the Caribbean does your cruise visitors prefer? Why?
Well, I can answer a few, and then Russell can give you a perspective from Royal Caribbean. So we have many of our 9 global cruise brands that sail throughout the Caribbean region, including various destinations in Mexico. And I think for us as a cruise industry, we don't really market necessarily one destination or another. What we put together is a variety of destinations, and we put together an itinerary. And that's what we go to the marketplace with. We need to sell marketable itineraries that guests want to go on. So it's really a collection of destinations, and we need very strong destinations across the region. So I would say Grand Cayman certainly is a marquee port for us. Other ports that do very well, I would say any port we go to is a great port, because I don't think we're going to take any of our guests to a port that is not somewhere that they want to go to. So I think what we try to do is you put together a collection of different destinations and different offerings. So I think any destination that we go to, any cruise that we sell, is a great cruise and is a great destination.
That was a good answer, David. David was on roller skate. So I'll give a different perspective from the standpoint of where the market sort of goes for the cruise ships, and I'll name a few. Certainly, the Bahamas, Nassau. Is well, I mean, they're approaching, 2 million visitors. It's a vibrant part of their economy. Cozumel, San Juan, St. Martin, in terms of the numbers of cruise guests and the consistency over time of demand, and it's driven a lot by the facilities. If you go to all of these places, 10 years ago, they were having discussions more than that, because Oasis is celebrating 10 years now. So probably 10, 15 years ago, they were having discussions about building Oasis-class ports. They were some of the first in the market. to do that. So when the new ships started rolling out, first by Royal, and David talked about his brands as well, they had the infrastructure to really support it. And so that, in terms of the numbers of where cruise visitors, arrive every year, a lot of when you see those eye-popping numbers over a decade, it's really driven by having the infrastructure to support not only the big ships, but all kinds of ships and just modernizing their facilities. And so that drives it. But the number one reason people pick or go on a cruise is, first is a destination that people decide where they want to go. Number two, they decide when they can take the time to go on vacation. And then the third is they'll either pick a hotel or a cruise ship, and then they'll pick, which cruise they want to go on, which brand. So it's driven by destination, but the infrastructure is very important in our business. And the tiers of those folks that have, number one, consistency, longevity of a high demand of cruise passengers. It is the facility that allows for that type of increase in growth, and most importantly, consistency over time and seasonality. Sure.
Federico Gonzalez from Royal Caribbean. We evaluate destinations using two different categories. One is appeal, and the other one is satisfaction. Appeal is kind of the marketability of the destination, and Cayman is pretty highly rated. As David said, it's really a marquee destination. And then we have satisfaction, is the actual experience of the guest after visiting the destination. And we look for destinations that have high appeal and the actual experience equals or exceeds the expectation of the guest. And that's where Cayman is lacking. So you have great marketability, great appeal, but the actual experience of a guest, because of the tendering experience, is giving Cayman a low rating compared to other destinations. Other destinations have high appeal, high satisfaction. Cayman, high appeal, medium satisfaction because of the tendering operation.
Where is Verdant Isle registered?
The Cayman Islands.
Why not consider building the berthing facility in West Bay next to the turtle farm? Why not consider building the berthing facility in West Bay next to the turtle farm?
Well, if you think we got trouble with this one. The reality is that there's a reason why the harbor is where the harbor is. 300 years ago, when Cayman was at a point where the settlers were looking for places to moor their vessels, that's where they chose. They chose there because it was deep enough water, because it's on the lee side of the island. Anywhere else we go, we're going to have to do massive amounts of dredging. Down West Bay by the turtle farm is far more exposed on the northwest part of the island. I think we all who've lived long enough will understand the force of northwesters, particularly the one that destroyed the turtle farm completely when it was on the seaside and forced us to rebuild it over on the land side. So perhaps the water down there is deep enough, but there are a whole lot of other reasons, not least of which is what they call that thing, the NIMBY syndrome. So we have a harbor that's been used for nigh on 300 years. There is, contrary to what many say, there is massive damage out there where the cruise ships currently anchor. There have been significant number of accidents, not just cruise ships, but other ships as well, running aground in some instances. Those of you who've been here long enough will remember Rhapsody on the Rocks down at Port Sacal, plus other damage to Eden Rock and other areas by ships, principally by anchoring. But even without the accidents, nigh on 50 years of throwing big anchors overboard is bound to have done massive damage. I grew up swimming, snorkeling, spearfishing out there. I know what out there was like. The photographs I'm seeing now are something completely different. The benefit of the piers is, as was seen there, is yes, there is going to be some environmental sacrifice to build them, but once they're built, we do away with anchoring. And what is there now will have an opportunity to recover, in addition to the efforts that are going to be made by Dr. Vaughn and others to give some of them rebirth. And in 30, 40 years' time, we won't be having this kind of conversation about how much damage has been done out there by anchoring. That's how I see it. There's always a trade-off for anything in life. And in my view, building the piers is worth the trade-off that will inevitably occur as a result of having to relocate some of the coral.
Will you confirm if any Caymanians own share in Verdant Isle and tell the public the names of these people/owners?
So just to expand a little bit on what Russell answered a second ago, Verdant Isle is currently going through our registration process, and the company will be registered here in Grand Cayman. 3 of the companies that represent Verdant Isle are public companies. We're traded every day on the New York Stock Exchange. We are obligated not to actually have ownership, single ownership within those companies because we're a public company. So I think, Strand, we're working through the process now, and we should have the company registered within probably by the end of the year. We should have the company fully registered. But as far as ownership from Caymanians, I do not know that answer. Do you have anything?
You have McAlpine, who is a partner. You have Orion, who is a partner. You have Carnival, who's a partner. And you have Royal Caribbean. That's the 4 partners in Verdant.
Right.
3 of them are publicly traded. I'm assuming that McAlpine is the one that's not publicly traded.
Correct.
And I think that the Cayman Islands know who McAlpine is, and they've been here a long time. And any place you go in Cayman, they've built something, stood behind it, managed by some very, very well-known and respected individuals.
What is the financial arrangement if the debt is paid off early? $8.05 times 2,500 equals 20 million over 25 years, or 503 million.
Finish. If the debt's paid off early, there's a formula of how the government and Verdant will share in the profit, so to speak, that was not assumed in the licensing. So example being, if it's more, the debt is paid off, and then it continues to work for, say, 3 more years of income, there will be a formula of how the sharing goes.
How will the transplant of coral be managed?
The transplant of the coral relocation will be managed by our highly specialized team, which is Polaris Sea Ventures and Reef Tech. And the oversight committee, sorry. And so part of our, that could have been bad. Part of our commitment is that Verdant Isles is establishing a oversight committee, an environmental oversight committee, which will be 3 to 4 well-known, not disclosed yet. We have a list that's being generated of scientists, environmentalists, whatnot, that are a third party and they will be paid through a grant set up by the consortium. So they're not a direct employee of ours. They'll be an independent oversight committee that will be the stewards of while we move the coral, while we transplant it, while we build the project. They'll be here for purposes for the Caymanian people.
Yeah, Barry, just to add to that, so from the government side, we've got a company called Royal Asconing, who are environmental managers. Those of you who were in Prospect last week would have seen a woman called Chris Adnett. So they actually wrote the specifications for dredge management plan, the coral relocation plan, the environmental management plan. That's what these guys are going to commit to. And from the government side, there'll be our environmental manager to make sure that you do what you said you're going to do throughout the 3 years. So you've got a double amount. Yeah.
What system of replacement, replenishment will be undertaken? Repayment of loan expenses is long-term, but it begs the question of where funds will be attained for later replacement, replenishment, or refurbishment of the dock will come from.
As we talked about in the presentation, for 25 years, the Verdant Partners are responsible for the operation and maintenance of the pier facility. And the insurance. It's in case there's some industrial accident, God forbid, a ship collides with a pier, there's a hurricane, we would be responsible for repairing or replacing those piers, not the government.
How often do you advertise jobs with Verdant Isle for jobs on board the cruise ships? Give some of the jobs, tell us what they pay.
Well, I think we always say that's commensurate on the experience, so that's what I always try to do every year. However, we had, it was a few weeks ago, correct, Lynn, and we had a job fair, so there were representatives from Carnival Corporation, Carnival Cruise Lines, Royal Caribbean. We're happy to kind of re-engage with that if there's further interest, but I think they shared with the broader community or anyone that had interest what it takes to look at a job, whether it's on board one of our ships, or opportunities shoreside, because we have 7 headquarters around the world. There are certainly opportunities shoreside in a variety of those. But we already came one time for this kind of public outreach and sharing how to look and work with us with some of these opportunities on board or shore. We're happy to come back and talk with our human resources team to come back and share some further information. We've already established that, and we're happy to continue doing that with you.
Thanks, David. The only thing I would add to that is we'd be happy to come back and do as many job fairs as you all like. And we post a lot of our open positions on LinkedIn. So if anybody's on LinkedIn, you can go on the platform, look at our jobs, and please apply. We love to have great people on our team. Just so you know, we hire roughly about 16,000 people a year, I believe, at Royal, and it's over 1,000 a month. We are huge companies, over 75,000 employees. The majority of our folks are shipboard, but we look for qualified people, shipboard, shoreside, private destinations, headquarters. I mean, there's all kinds of jobs, and I think as Michael Bailey pointed out in the first presentation, he started out as an entry-level person aboard a ship a long time ago, and he is now the president and CEO of Royal Caribbean Cruises, Royal Caribbean International. So these jobs are great jobs, and some of the entry-level jobs are entry-level positions, but the sky's the limit in the cruise industry. So please take a look at our open positions and apply.
Can you please speak to infrastructure needs in Georgetown that are not being addressed but will continue to be a problem with increased capacity, i.e. lack of public bathrooms, restrooms?
Well, we've had the Georgetown Revitalization Project on the way now for about 5 years. That it includes a range of things. Most of the work that you've actually seen done so far are dealing with the road system to make better connectivity and to ultimately try to avoid having to put more pressure on on Harbor Drive so that people have another way around to get to where they're going. But the project involves much more than that, and restroom facilities and more green space and better lighting and a whole range of things, including changes to planning regulations to encourage people to actually live in the center of town. All of these are things that haven't just been considered, but are actually underway. So yes, we understand that infrastructure is a critical piece of the overall picture, and the cruise port and enhanced cargo port are critical aspects of that.
Premier, if I can add one thing to your comment. In the commercial area that you see behind Russell and through the video, we are also including over 70 restroom facilities, or not facilities, actual uses in the space, as well as our own wastewater treatment plant to deal with the waste.
If you could pull up the slide that actually
Sure.
has the overview. Who has that? You have it? Keep going.
I'll get up there. So the restroom facilities, I know the camera guys don't like me at the moment, but that's okay. So this is the commercial center that I'm speaking of. And as you can see, we'll have a restroom block in this vicinity, as well as down near exiting out onto Harbor Drive, and the wastewater treatment plants will be located behind the commercial facility on this alleyway that provides parking and access to the back of these commercial facilities.
So what Premier was speaking about is the Georgetown Revitalization Program that goes hand in hand with this. What you're looking at there is actually moving the tour and taxi off of Main Street, and you can see the facility of how they drive in a very planned and easy way, pick up fare and leave and move right into the flow into Georgetown itself. But the other point that needs to be made very strongly is that when you talk about infrastructure, it assumes that you're going to have more growth to challenge that infrastructure. The carrying capacity of the island and the way the deal is put together is that we would not have any more people on a daily basis than we have now. And because the Port Authority of the Cayman Island manages and runs the cruise berthing facility and the cargo port, they have the ability, which is the policy of the government, to cap the number of people that are allowed to come to Grand Cayman, meaning that there will be no more stress on the island itself. What we want to do is manage when they arrive. So as was talked about by seasonality, during the slower months is when the increase would come, and that would flatten out the season and give more opportunity on a yearly basis.
Construction in the Caribbean, cruise tourism in the Caribbean drops off in the summer due to hurricane season. There are 20 fewer ships using the port in July 2019 than November this month. Why would a berthing facility make a difference for cruise business in the summer during what are the calmest conditions, barring a hurricane? In the year, if you are not currently coming here at that time of year, when tendering is obviously easiest.
Royal Caribbean's, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Royal Caribbean's peak season is May through October, as Mr. Bailey pointed out in the video.
So what we have done is looked at the opportunity. And this again is an obligation and a policy of the government to create opportunity for the benefit of the Caymanian people. And we looked at the slow season, the availability of the vessels. So we talked to Carnival, who has a very high-level vice president here tonight, We talked to Royal, who has 2 vice presidents here tonight. We've also talked to Disney and MSC at the highest level, and they all committed that during the slower months, the reason they couldn't give more passengers is because of the large vessels that they have coming on the western route. So for us to be able to take advantage of the Oasis that crosses here every week with 6,000 passengers, think of it on a monthly basis, we have to have the ability to bring them ashore in a very easy and planned way. That's the cruise berthing facility. It's the same thing that Vice President Candeep has talked about with all the new large ships that Carnival has coming. They're going to be working this western route in the summer, but they're not going to stop in Cayman if they have to tender because of their guest experience and because of the time it takes. MSC is the same thing. They're growing and looking for opportunities in the same time period. Disney has looked and talked about what they can do and when they can do it. So we feel, based on all of the effort we've put into this project, that the 400,000 or 500,000 passenger increase in a timed manner is very attainable, and it's also a very positive effect for growing the industry in a sustainable model, because we don't want to grow 500,000 people in 1 year. What we want to do is grow 4 or 5% a year, which gives opportunity for all the different businesses to get involved and improve their skill sets and compete in a managed way.
What if you're wrong about the coral replanting and the silt, and that the Caymanian people will benefit? Who will explain that to future Caymanian generations?
Well, we are, as I said, acting very responsibly. We can't just sit on our hands paralyzed by fear and do nothing. We have hired and are hiring the best in class with respect to every aspect of this project. If we're not hiring them, we're insisting that Verdant Isle do, so that we have the benefit of the best advice and guidance and science that there is. On that basis, and it's on that basis that we make these decisions. I don't know that we can do more than that.
When you interviewed the cruise ship guests about the tendering process and the wait time, did you explain to them the risk and destruction involved to acres of reef, hundreds of thousands of coral, and the beauty of our island? If so, what was their reaction? Would you like me to repeat?
I think that
When you interviewed the cruise ship guest about the tendering process, the wait time, did you explain to them the risk and destruction involved to acres of reef, hundreds of thousands of coral, and the beauty of the islands? If so, what was their reaction?
So I didn't do the interview. I don't know what was told to the people who were interviewed. But I think the question itself wants a reply on what is a thought from government as the interviewer of what has been captioned as the destruction of a reef and a beautiful system. The Premier has said earlier that we accept that there is going to be some type of environmental issue, and there will be some environmental impact to this project. But did anybody walk here tonight? Well, if you took a car, you would have saved the carbon footprint if you walked. So, you made a conscious decision of something that you could have done to save the environment or put more stress on it. So that's a very simple example of you have to make a decision based on the most information that you can get. It's been said we got the best in class information, and we have to look at the Georgetown Harbor is beautiful. Everybody here or most people have dove Balboa for years. You've seen what happens. The harbor, you've seen the destruction. But the balance of this is what is the opportunity and what is the ability from the economic value for the people compared to the environmental impact that it's going to have. And the decision is that based on all the information that we have, it's going to be of value to move forward with the cruise berthing facility.
It is said that Verdant Isle will be totally responsible for building the berthing facilities and government will not have to pay any cost. How can Caymanians be so certain and comfortable that our government will not have to pay anything? Haven't various other companies broken their promises and gone bankrupt?
So we could go into a lot of detail, but fundamentally, just to roll things back, the government did a pre-qualification exercise. We got 11 bids. From those 11 bids, we pre-qualified 9. From those 9 went forward to ISOS with 5 and 3 in the final tender. So for the $200 million, the Verdant Isle are putting in 40% equity. Yeah, think about that. That's how much money they're backing behind this, and they're borrowing the rest. So if the world's 2 largest cruise lines go bankrupt, I think then there's something else going on in the world which is of more concern.
How closely is the project working with the DOE? How closely is the project working with DOE?
So again, the project worked with the DOE, and it came up in the video. And there's a lot of confusion and discussion about the process. So as Premier said, back in 2015, there was an EIA. As a result of that EIA, there were major concerns coming from the DOE and EAB. At that point, the government went back and came up with a new design to mitigate those. The Verdant Isle are now going for an EIA scoping update, which will be submitted to EAB and DOE. The government meets with them all the time, and Verdant met with them all the time. And just to reiterate what's on the video, if it's a yes, then to actually get a permit to build a facility, these guys need to get a coastal works permit. To get the coastal works permit, they need a coral location plan, a dredge management plan, an environmental management plan. So as Barry was saying, it won't happen overnight, and that is their involvement. They are the authorised people on the island who submit their reports to Cabinet for a coastal works permit.
What is the 10-acre dredge area made up? Is the 10-acre dredge area made up of all coral?
No. So the 10 acres is made up of roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 acres of coral, and the remaining is a coral habitat or hard bottom. Sorry.
Who will guarantee that the jobs will go to Caymanians? More people, a bigger footprint on the island. Will there be a push for improved infrastructure?
We have 2 questions here.
Sure. Who will guarantee that the jobs will go to Caymanians? More people and bigger footprint on the island. Will there be a push for improved infrastructure?
Well, let me answer the second question first, which I think I've already done, is we've said, and I think everyone who lives here will see that this government is pushing really hard to improve critical infrastructure, particularly the road network. So the answer to that is yes. The first question, we have in place a system of work permitting. So anyone who works here who is not Caymanian or working for government requires a work permit. That will apply to all of these jobs. as it applies to all other jobs. We are at a point now where, as I said earlier, Caymanian unemployment is at 4.8%. We are shortly going to be at a point where there are very few Caymanians, if any, available to do any of these jobs. So you'll have people moving from one job perhaps to another job. But at present and for the foreseeable future, employment of Caymanians is not a major problem.
What are the other coral reskinning things that Plant a Million Corals will bring to the table? Is there data? Are there publications?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure.
That's the man for the job.
I'll repeat the question. What are the other coral reskinning things that Plant a Million Corals will bring to the table? Is there data? Are there publications?
One more time.
Sure. What are the other coral reskinning things? Reskinning. That Plant a Million Corals will bring to the table? Is there data? Are there publications?
Yes, there is publications on Dr. Vaughn's projects. I don't know of every project, but I know Dr. Vaughn has worked closely with the U.S. Navy in the Key West port, as well as in Belize and other areas in the Keys. As far as other things that they're bringing to the table, I'm not sure what that means, but just to kind of describe a little bit about how the process works. Maybe that'll answer the question. So when we go move the coral and relocate it to its new habitat, there will be pieces of coral broken and left behind. Dr. Vaughn, as his team, is going to recover those pieces, bring them back to a nursery that will be built within the facility of the port that's going to be open to public. And basically they take these pieces of coral about the size of the top of a pin, and they, when he says microfragment them, they actually cut them with a jewelry saw. Same thing you see people make jewelry out of with coral and so forth. They cut these pieces and they cut them around all the edges. So it basically, better words, it aggravates the coral and creates a stimulation for it to grow. They then glue that onto a pedestal of small piece of concrete about the size of what I call a silver dollar back home. And then we grow that in a nursery for 6 months. And from the size of a pinhead, it'll grow into the size of that $50 within 6 months, which usually in nature would take between 5 and 25 years, depending on what type of coral it is. Every 6 months, that product then goes back out to the sea. When you talk about reskinning things, so what I think the video is trying to explain is a lot of coral restoration projects that Dr. Vaughn does, primarily, mostly, is areas where there's dead coral, where there's not living coral, but the coral substrate is there. So they go in with these pieces of concrete about this size, and it's got a small nipple, for better words, on the bottom side. They drill and epoxy these pieces into the coral. And they place them, every 5 inches, 6 inches on center. And it kind of looks like a pepperoni pizza, as Dr. Vaughn describes. Over 2 years, 3 years, a total brain coral can be basically reskinned. And how this works and works effectively in nature, as Dr. Vaughn puts out, is that all this coral is going to come from the same family. So they're not competing against each other and trying to overgrow each other. They basically fuse together. Answer the question?
I hope. I think you may stay there for a minute. Has a coral relocation and restoration project of this scale ever been successful? Has a coral relocation and restoration project of this scale ever been successful?
So, sorry. So there has been a lot of coral relocation projects. Cayman is a large project. But you got to think about, you break these projects down. What everybody needs to realize is, yes, this is a large project, but on a small scale, or you just take it, you break it, these successful projects down, this is just another size project. So we're basically taking the success of all of these projects, the project's just bigger. Have we done a project of this size? Has Orion, Carnival, Royal went out and built a project where we're moving, you know, X amount of acres of coral of this nature? I would have to say no. But we have done a lot of projects and a lot of very successful projects. So we're very confident in our team and our science and our people to produce the exact results that we're seeing today.
Is the dredging mostly sand or silt?
Sand. It's a very low content of silt in the sand. We'll confirm that even further once we get in to do geotechnical and borings if the project is moved forward.
How many of the larger ships will be built over the next 5 years?
So, as we've said, we have 9 global cruise brands across the Carnival Corporation fleet. We have about 25 ships on order. 9 of those are these XL platform with options for many more. And we're going to be bringing those across a variety of 4 or 5 different brands, both in the European market and in the Caribbean market. So over time, you'll continue to see that.
With respect to, first of all, David, I believe the order book data is public. So we
Correct.
can.
The order book will be, options maybe not, which shows kind of the commitment beyond that.
Yeah, so there's something called an order book, it's public. I can say with respect to Royal Caribbean International, all of their ships that are on order are large ships. Royal Caribbean builds Oasis class ships, and the next class of ships will be called Icon. I think that's public. David's sitting here in the front. It's a big ship. They only build big ships. Royal Caribbean International only builds big ships. 60 in the industry, big ships on order for the next 10 years. 60 large ships, is that Oasis XO class, over the next 10 years. Yeah. And typically what happens is when we purchase a new ship, at least for Royal, the older ships kind of go out of service, so it's typically a replacement for the most part. So the older, smaller ships are sold and are taken out of service, and they're replaced with a big ship. So overall capacity increases because the number of cabins increases. Sometimes the number of ships stays sort of the same, but what you'll see over time is a phasing out of the smaller, older ships, and the fleet will be dominated by only large ships. So when we have the conversation about the future and will the ships come here, if we only have, or the majority of ships in the fleet for Royal Caribbean International are large ships, that's when we talk about the opportunity to bring the ships here, right? Because that most of the fleet, if you look at 60 ships over 10 years, most of what's going to happen in the next decade is the production of large ships. So with respect to that rollout over the next 10 years, are the ships going to come here, or are they going to go other places? And that's, I think, what we're discussing here. So the cruise ship fleet that you see now will be vastly different in the next 10 years, and that'll happen quickly. Every single year, you'll start to see these large ships come, and so rapidly, the cruise industry is going to transform to something different than what's there now. And the question is, you know, who's going to benefit it, or the places that actually have the infrastructure to accept the large ships, who can tie up the large ships, and the infrastructure in place to do that.
How will cruise tourism be affected for the 2 years of construction of the port?
So during the bid process, we established with our partners a very extensive phasing plan, and one of the mandates issued to us by the government was to not interfere with cargo or cruise operation. And through our phasing plans, there's multiple phases in this project, we're able to work around by not interfering in any of those operations. So business as usual for the port, as well as I'm concerned for the people in downtown Georgetown. A lot of people's asked me, well, where are you stockpiling all the material to build this stuff? How are you getting it to your work zone? So all of our steel piles, all of our steel sheet piles, a lot of our heavy marine material will be coming in on a ship that will transload out in the water and keep on our barges in the bay, so we're not actually storing that on land.
How deep are the piers going to be? How deep are the piers going to be?
Are you referring the pilings? So the piers, there's a shot somewhere in the presentation. You're pointing. Anyway, I think, Rob, the pilings are going to be between 40 and 60 feet, and they'll get even deeper as they go out into the deeper water. And the pile sizes range from between 36 to 56 inches in diameter. One thing to kind of think about is on these outside piles, these outside rows of piles, and we'll determine that when we finalize the engineering studies, if this project is moved forward, advance. Those piles will advance, once we drive those piles into the ground, we'll advance a Haynes drill and advance it even further down below the actual tipping point of the pile or the bottom of the pile, 20 to 30 feet in the seabed. And that will then be encaged with steel and concrete to prevent, or not to prevent, to give strength to the pier for any uplifts for hurricanes or storm events.
We're going to ask I will pose approximately two more questions. I've been requested to do a hard stop at 9. Any questions? 9:30, sorry. Any questions that were not posed tonight will be uploaded in a few days to supportourtourism.com. If we are the top/near top destination without piers, when everyone else has piers, surely we are doing something right. The others aren't, having no piers. What would you say to that?
Well, I think we've explained that the status quo is not going to continue. I think Russell just went through the scenario that the major cruise companies are all opting for larger vessels, and the larger vessels are not capable of tender in the sense that it simply would take too long, aside from the obvious risks and inconvenience and less than pleasurable experiences that cruise passengers recount. So if we don't provide a facility to accommodate these larger vessels, we are going to lose that market share that we currently have now, because there are not going to be as many smaller vessels available to call.
Final question.
Let me weigh in on that as well. What we want out of our cruise visitors is the highest spending visitors. And we want to create the opportunity for them to spend the most amount of money and enjoy Cayman for the longest period of time. That's what the cruise berthing facility offers. And the other part that's a little misleading is that our spend, because we don't have piers, is actually going down. We had 2 years ago, the daily spend was $115 a day. The last report was $105. The destinations that have the cruise berthing facility, their spend is actually going up. So we're going in the wrong direction, and the ones with berthing is going in the right direction. So again, this is all part of doing the right thing and getting the right customers here and giving them the opportunity that they need. It goes back to, if you make it easy, people will enjoy it, they'll come back, and they'll spend.
And if I may add something about the spending, also you're going to benefit having a pier for cruise spending. that you are not having that right now. The crew actually stays on board in Cayman. In some other destinations, for example, San Martin, the crew spending is even higher than the passenger spending. So you, without having a pier, you're really not having the opportunity to benefit for the crew spending. And let me tell you something about the crew spending. When they find something, a destination that they like, they are loyal. They're gonna share that experience with other crew members or relatives that may be working in other ships, and they're gonna pass the word out. So that's really an opportunity that is out there that Cayman is not benefiting from.
Final question. Why have you not invited or asked Dr. Guy Harvey to speak and explain the reasons why we should not take such a big risk to destroy our most precious natural Georgetown harbor, the coral and reefs? Why take the chance to make our water clear and ocean milky and messy?
Thank you very much for the question. Dr. Harvey was at the first presentation with Michael Bailey. He was a presence there, and he asked questions and talked to the visitors that were there. So, we're very well acquainted with Guy, and we like exchanging information, and we're quite happy that he's got comments on it. So he paints the bow of the Norwegian cruise liners. He has a restaurant that's involved in the cruise industry basically, and depends on cruise passengers. So I think he knows a lot about the cruise industry.
I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight and for your participation. And as I said, for the few questions that were not posed, it will be uploaded to supportertourism.com. Our next town hall meeting will be this Saturday, November 23rd. That'll be at the Savannah Primary School Hall. Followed by Tuesday the 26th of November, we'll come to the District of Bodden Town. December 3rd, which is Tuesday, will be at East End Civic Center. December 5th, which is a Thursday, Northside Civic Center, and Kim and Brack will be there on Friday the 6th. Again, we thank you for your participation and continued support to come out and hear the facts. Please partake of the remaining refreshments to the back of our room.